We are joined today by Dan Rogers, founder of QikServe and VP of Market Development and Innovation. Dan started QikServe in 2011 and spent the next 13 years building it into one of the world's leading hospitality tech platforms. It currently is deployed across 8,000 plus locations in 44 countries, powering digital ordering and self-service for leading enterprise brands around the world, and delivering over $3.8 billion in digital sales for operators globally. With that, I will turn things over to him to get started. Take it away, Dan.
That was a really great intro. Thank you for that, Sam. So let me just advance the slides. So what I want to do today is, as Sam said, just cover off what restaurant operators kind of need to know about digital ordering in 2026, and more importantly, how that fits in with the wider tech ecosystem around restaurants. It's a really, really incredibly exciting space right now, and there's a lot going on, and digital ordering has come a long way in a very short space of time. But first of all, a little bit about me. So I started QikServe in 2011 and started it in the UK. It was really an idea born out of frustration with hospitality. I used to take my two young children to restaurants, and in the UK we have this service model where you have a table number and you go up to the counter and you order at a counter, and then you come back. And most of the time you have to make a decision about whether you take your children up or you leave valuables at your table. On this occasion, I left my kids at the table, so and then went up and placed the order. But that was a really frustrating experience for me, and I kept looking at my smartphone and going, there must be a better way to do this. And I put together some experience that I had deploying QR codes in a completely different industry, in the pharmaceutical industry, and knowing that we could use QR codes to track things. You thought of the notion of putting together a QR code and a table with a digital journey. And that was really the beginnings of QikServe way back in 2011. We actually went on to patent that QR code-based ordering solution in the US in 2015. So QikServe actually holds the patent for that. In 2016, we then went on to expand our offering, and we realized that actually the more channels that you could give a guest, the better it was for them, and the more engagement that you could get from those guests. So we embarked on expanding our product set, and in 2016 we added self-service kiosk to our product portfolio, and that was really in response to market demand. Later on, we then added pay at table, so using your phone to scan a QR code and retrieve your check, and then pay your check off with Google Pay or Apple Pay. We also then expanded that solution into a product that we call OpenCheck. So again, it's similar to online ordering, but we're able to use the pay at table solution alongside online ordering to create an ordering experience where a guest can run effectively a tab or run an order process like they would do in a normal restaurant. Over the time period, we developed a platform. We have over 130 integrations on our platform. We service way more actually now than 8,000 locations across 44 countries around the world. Within that, we also have a major innovation that we did a few years ago, which was effectively taking our API layer and turning that into a product as well. And that was really kind of first steps towards headless commerce. In 2024, we were acquired by the Access Group around the same time as Paytronix. And I'm going to talk a bit more later on about how the two of us coming together in terms of QikServe and Paytronix for the US market is a really, really incredibly powerful play. So let's just talk about what's happening in the industry right now. The industry has moved quite rapidly towards digital ordering and digital capability within restaurants, particularly post-pandemic, when there was obviously a need to move to contactless dining and other things. What we're seeing in the market today is that there's a growing gap between the operators that jumped on digital early and the rest that maybe didn't quite get the memo and came on a bit later, and we're starting to see that gap widen quite considerably. The operators that are embracing digital are seeing measurable uplift across their guest and their guest experiences. In the hotel industry in particular, we've got a real issue with disconnected systems. And in our own research as part of the Access Group, about 76% of hotel operators are still running disconnected, fragmented systems in their restaurant. And previous research in the US, on average, shows that there are 17 different bits of technology that surround a restaurant. And as you can imagine, that brings with it a lot of complexity in terms of managing that amount of technology. And if you're a big chain, then that's maybe not a big issue because you've got your own technical in-house IT teams. But as you go down into smaller operators, managing that kind of complexity is quite a challenge. So we're definitely in a phase now where digital is not really an option. It's starting to be, it has been for many years now, a must-have. And there's a lot of benefits that come from embracing digital. Covered that anyway. So first of all, let's talk about digital and what we mean by digital ordering in the restaurant context. Digital ordering isn't just online ordering for delivery and pickup. There's a number of touch points that you can put in your restaurant. I would even argue that EPOS or point of sale in a restaurant is still got an element of digital in there. It just has a human interface in terms of a member of staff. But one of the real big challenges that we've seen over the past 5-6 years is trying to bring that data set that comes from all of those different order entry points into something that is a consistent guest experience. And when you look at the kinds of technology, and particularly the kinds of technology that we, as the Access Group, can surface, you've got self-service kiosk, which is a big mover in recent years. Mobile ordering, and mobile ordering spans a lot of different types of journey, from order to table, from order for pickup, order for delivery, third-party delivery integrations. Many of this is happening on the guest's own device, and it can be either app-based or non-app-based. Definitely seen a move towards non-app-based technology as you try to take away some of the friction associated with downloads. Next along the line, we've got pay at table and open check, and that really is the movement of digital ordering into kind of fast casual, more table, sit down type restaurants, where at this point you're starting to have brands that are going to be a little bit more conscious about interfering with the face-to-face experience that they have in a restaurant. typically that is part of a brand persona. So when we get into these kinds of technology, it's really important that they're done in a way that doesn't interfere too much with the way in which the brand wants the guest to feel when they come into the restaurant. But almost certainly, one of the pain points that happens in a sit-down restaurant in particular is that moment where you need to get your check and you want to leave. On average, that takes around about 12 minutes, which isn't that hard to kind of work out why that would be. So once I've decided I have to pay, I have to get the attention of a server. If it's a busy restaurant, that is going to eat up a fair amount of time. I might miss eye contact 2 or 3 times with my server. You then have to have the server go and get the check, so they're off back to the point of sale. They then come back. They may come back with a handheld, or they may be sharing handhelds. All of that adds a lot of time and a lot of friction to a process where when you've made that journey, when you made that decision to leave, you want to be able to leave as fast as possible. And the ability to pick up a check on your own mobile device, pay it off using Apple Pay or Google Pay, takes that 12-minute journey time down to about 30 seconds to a minute, which is really important in terms of what you can then do in terms of table turns. The other two entry points are kind of your online ordering for delivery and collection and those kind of things. That's a well-established order platform now. I reckon it's been around now for, must be close on 20 years. And it's a really important part of guest engagement now across the restaurant industry. One of the things that's overlooked in terms of guest journeys is the back end. And menu management is something that isn't really thought about, but actually has a huge impact on the guest experience. If your menu's not up to date, if you are not controlling your upsell and your cross-sell logic, if you're not synced with your POS across all your channels, then those things are going to be really detrimental to your brand. Either something's not available, or it doesn't work in the mobile app, or it's been misconfigured. If those things happen, it impacts all of the digital journeys before it. So within our platform, the menu management piece is actually one of the most important aspects of digital. And what we're ultimately trying to do is create that single guest journey across multiple entry points. It doesn't matter if you're outside the restaurant, in your home, inside the restaurant. We want customers to be able to engage digitally. And there's a huge number of benefits that can come from being able to do that. If we take things like Kiosk, first of all, so Kiosk is now quite well established, and there is a lot of data around Kiosk and how it impacts on guests and ROI. On average, we see across our estate that check values will grow by about 22%. And in some concepts, that can be pushed even higher into the kind of medium to high 30s. And that kind of behavioral aspect is something that you get on digital, but you don't necessarily get on face-to-face transactions. The one important thing about a digital channel like self-service kiosk is that it's never going to forget to upsell. It's going to take the guest through a standard journey, regardless of who is standing in front of that device. About 30%, yeah, 30. So some other bits of data here. We get about a 30% increase in spending from guests who browse, upsell, and meal deals independently. So if you are on your own device and you're able to spend time, that time is important because you can deliberate a bit more. You can make some choices without being under pressure. The kiosk journey, the kiosk product itself, I'm again talking from our perspective, is a very, very powerful tool in terms of throughput and transaction management. But in order to do that, it has to be highly scalable. And what we see here is over 22,000 transactions processed daily across QikServe deployments. And about coming back to the menu management piece, we handle about 4 million plus menu combinations across the technology platform as well. What that means, if we talk about kiosk in particular, which can be quite capital intensive, you can be looking at returns in as few as 8 weeks across your estate. And in order to do that, well, in addition to doing like capital expense for kiosks, we also have models where you can do hardware as a service as well. So if the capex is problematic, then hardware as a service is a really interesting option for operators who want to get into kiosk but don't really have the capital to outlay to fit out a store. As we look at digital, in terms of online ordering or mobile ordering, there's a number of benefits that we get from that. If we think about pay at table, as we talked earlier, pay at table will generate about 22% faster table turns. And if you multiply that up over like a 50, 60 cover restaurant, you're going to be able to sit down at least 4 more covers in a night if you can push that customer base to move through that payment process faster. So all those kind of 8, 9, 10 minutes that you're saving, they really add up, and they give you your tables back much faster than you would do normally. One other interesting thing that we saw, and we used to get quite a bit of pushback from teams in particular, operational teams in particular, when we were talking about digital and in particular pay at table, that they felt that it would impact their tips and gratuities. So we were quite curious about that, and we wanted to kind of test out whether that was correct or not in terms of an assumption. So we looked at all of our pay at table deployments, and we analyzed that with data from the point of sale. And what we found was that on average, the customers that paid their check through a digital channel, the tips were around 31% higher than the tips collected with someone signing a check. So there's real kind of, again, tangible benefits that come from implementing solutions like this, and they have real operational impact. So as we move on, and we think about the platform play as a whole, and I'm going to go on to talk a bit more about how connected digital is super important. In terms of the platform, scalability and security are massively important to us as a business. So we need to know that the platform can scale when it's been hit by thousands and thousands of requests. And that can happen really easily for a platform like ours. So if we're, for example, connected to loyalty and an LTO is pushed out, then we need to be able to respond and scale the platform accordingly. So in order to do that, we've built a platform that can really accommodate the complexity that hospitality brings. So things like we're dealing with 100,000 menu updates daily. We can accommodate about 490,000 orchestration combinations across that. And what that means is when we talk about orchestration combinations, that is processing a digital transaction through multiple vendors. So surfacing the menu to the customer, to the guest, then getting the menu, getting the order in, processing that order through identity, payment, point of sale, all those things, and that combination of things that happen on an order actually is hugely complex as we look at enterprise platforms. What we then find, one of the biggest challenges that we're seeing in the space today, and I alluded to it earlier, is with that data about 17 different bits of technology that sit around a restaurant. One of the biggest enemies that we have here is those systems not being able to talk to each other, and often we're spending time and effort trying to bring these digital channels together, particularly if you're interested in taking the best of breed in a particular sector. And again, referring back to that hotel data, about 76% of hotels are running fragmented technology stacks. I expect the same is true, maybe slightly less in food and beverage. But what that fragmentation means is that there's a whole other level of orchestration that's required in order to bring these things together. And what happens then is you then have to spend resources on making sure that data can flow from one thing to another. And for us, that meant delivering a product set that could help restaurant operators orchestrate these journeys in a way that can bring them all together. So we built a product called Connect, Evo, which is going to be called. And Evo is basically the API layer that does those 490,000 orchestrations and selling or providing that as a product layer that people can come on board with. And that's got a number of benefits because it means that you have everything in one place, but you can still have best of breed vendors and best of breed front end technology at the same time. So from digital ordering to full operational connectivity, part of the thesis of coming together with the Access Group was our ability to bring together multiple products in one place. Access grew through hospitality grew through acquisition, and over the years we've developed our full capability across hospitality tech. But we've also maintained our openness. So we're not an ecosystem that is closed, we're an ecosystem that is open. And our CEO often talks about Apple versus Android, and we definitely see ourselves as enterprise version of Android when it comes to digital hospitality. For what that means for operators is that you can build the right guest journey that you want with the right technology surrounding your restaurant. but still have that single layer of visibility. And one of the areas that we see this playing out in most powerfully is brands that are looking to expand internationally. So when we have a common layer sitting in the middle, and you want to go from the US to the UK or to France or Europe or to South America, each one of those geographical regions are going to have different ecosystems there. So whether that's different payments, different third-party delivery platforms, different point of sale, our ability to connect your digital channels, your digital experiences up to those worldwide ecosystems is absolutely like an amazing superpower. We help a number of brands expand internationally through our ability to connect those digital experiences. We're built for complexity, and one of our core values was simplifying complexity. But complexity is often seen as an enemy, when actually it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be seen as an enemy, because it's the complexity in menus, it's the complexity in brands that actually builds the experiences that guests tend to love. Whether you're talking about a Salad Works or another brand where you're really got to experience the making of food in front of you. In order to do that, in order to deliver that, there is complexity in there. What we have to do as partners in helping operators is to make that complexity as manageable as we possibly can. And we do that through our ability to scale, our ability to provide reliable technology that doesn't fall over, and to help operators connect these complex systems together, whether that is point of sale, payments, real-time menu sync. They're all super important bits of the ecosystem. So let's just talk about some of the mistakes, that we see in the space, and how we see people correcting them. So the first mistake that we see is people jumping on a bandwagon and looking at deploying single solutions in isolation, whether that's like an online ordering solution or just looking at kiosk and not thinking about other things. You are predominantly limiting yourself to one set of data, one set of digital guests. So what we find is that the more digital is deployed, the more engagement that you can get. So digital ordering works through that coordination. So an order placed in one channel, and orders placed in other channels, bringing those data sets together is really powerful. But also, you meet the guests where they want to order. So if they want to order from home, you have digital tech that can get them at home. When they walk in your store, arguably that person that's walked into your restaurant is an absolute buyer. So you know that they're there to buy. We need to make it as easy as possible for that guest to complete a transaction. Mistake 2 we see is treating menu like a static document, and actually it's your biggest asset. The menu that you have is by far the most important thing that communicates your brand and your brand experience. So treating it like a flat artifact within your brand means that you're going to miss out on your ability to engage consumer guests in your brand. What you need to do is think about menu as a live revenue lever. So you need to be able to think about real-time updates, how your upsell logic works, particularly in digital and particularly in self-service kiosk, where your drivers tend to be throughput and average check. So upsell logic and cross-sell logic become very, very important. And here is one of the areas where we believe AI and machine learning can have a really big impact. And the last thing is we often see restaurants talking about digital adoption and measuring success of digital implementations by the number of users that they've got on that. Where that misses the mark is that the quality of a digital interaction is more important than the number of digital interactions. So focusing on adoption instead of outcome means that you're not really looking at what difference that adoption made. So when you think about metrics, it's important to look at what are the outcomes. Did they spend more? Did they get through the journey fast enough? Was it a more efficient order to process in my restaurant? Coming together with Paytronix has been a real turbocharge for our operators and our customers. As QikServe, we were always really cognizant of the power of loyalty and digital together. But having the two under one roof actually is a transformational thing, because what that means for you as an operator is that we can start to harvest data sets across multiple order channels and feed that data set into a common platform that can then be used to drive those digital experiences and, quite frankly, non-digital experiences as well. All that learning actually compounds, and it really amplifies what digital ordering can do when you have an identity associated with it. So the most important thing here is the amount of data that we can collect. So when you don't have loyalty and digital together, the data that around ordering is going to sit in silos. When we put that data together with a loyalty program, we can really drive much richer experiences. We can deliver a full guest journey that is tailored to the person that's standing in front of or sitting on their mobile phone, and not just a generic experience. So what's coming? There's a lot of talk about AI. AI is a real thing. I know that many people were, oh, it's going to go away. It's not going to stick. But actually, I think most people, even on this webinar, are already engaging in ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini. So AI is real, and it's going to be probably the biggest transformational thing that's happened in industry, let alone in hospitality, in decades. But what is its application for us? Well, the thing that we can see right in front of us is its ability to look at those data sets that we talked about earlier. Those data sets then become a wealth of information that we can use to drive personalized experiences within a restaurant. It also means that with AI, we can simplify that connection as well. So AI is amazing at joining two things that it knows about. We're definitely going to see more agentic ordering. I think native ordering through ChatGPT and other LLMs, I think is a hugely exciting next step. And also in the back office, the agentic is going to help in terms of order prep, queue management, stock management, all these things as these data sets are brought together. Agentic is going to have a massive impact. We're almost certainly in the next 5 years going to see platform consolidation accelerate, largely because of AI, because the ability for operators to do more stuff on their own is going to accelerate. We are now in an age where a novice can probably build a front end or an integration or whatever. So that consolidation around platform is going to be super important, because what those AI tools need are well-defined entry points to be able to build digital journeys and experiences. And that's me. I'm happy to take some questions.
All right. Thank you so much for that, Dan. Yeah, it looks like we have some questions from the audience that have come in. Feel free to continue sending them in as we make our way through these. All right. So the first one here, someone wants to know, why do you think that table service and servers in general are initially against pay at table?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very good question. So what we found was that there's a sense of digital taking away from something that they think they should be doing, and if you're a hospitality worker, your job is hospitality, right? So a lot of the early pilots and implementations we did, people saw the use of digital as a slight against their ability to provide service. And actually, that was the wrong way to think about it. The tech is there to pick up the slack. So when you are slammed in a restaurant, and you can't get round your tables, or things are happening, you're trying to find a toast device somewhere, you've only got a few of them. The tech is there to pick up the slack. It's not there to replace or degrade the brand experience that you're looking for. And I think operators do need to think quite hard about how they implement and how they bring their teams along with technology. The worst thing that we see happen when someone implements something like at table or pay at table is they put it in, they don't engage their staff, they don't re-educate their guests, and the solutions tend to fail. And that is not good for anybody, because then there's a pervasive view of what the tech is and isn't doing.
Great. All right. Looks like we've got a couple more here. Someone else wants to know, the data shows kiosk users spend 51% more, and that guests exploring upsells at their own pace see a 30% spending increase. What's actually driving that behavior? Is it the technology itself or something deeper about consumer psychology?
There's two things. So there's the consumer psychology side, and then there's what the tech is able to do. On the psychology side, there's a number of things going on, and the best way to articulate this is to compare it against a counter transaction. And if someone walks up to a counter, and they've got to have a human-to-human interaction, it's in human nature to feel like potentially you're being judged. So when someone asks about an upsell, for example, do you want an extra dessert? Do you want that? If you haven't thought about it before, the most frequent response is going to be no. So that kind of pressure that comes from that face-to-face interaction is taken away when you move it to technology. The other thing that happens is people that are behind a counter or serving someone, humans don't like rejection. So if you're being asked in a restaurant to push an upsell and you're getting no's often, so people will just say, no, I'm not interested. No, I'm not interested. Eventually, the server, the human, goes, actually, I can't take any more rejection, so I'm going to stop offering it. So those are the two kind of psychological aspects. What the technology does is it removes those pressures, right? It now gives the guest time without the pressure that they would feel, either that they were being judged or rushed or other things when they're in a face-to-face situation. And the last thing there is that the machine will take rejection all day long, but it's still going to ask every single time, do you want this upsell? Do you want this cross-sell? Can I add something else to your basket? It's never going to forget to do that. And that is a primary driver behind ATV increasing on digital channels.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense there. Someone else asks, for a multi-unit operator evaluating digital ordering for the first time, where do you recommend they start? Kiosk, mobile, or pay at table, and why?
I think that depends on your concept, right? So entry points differ depending on what type of service model that you have. So if you're kind of QSR, fast casual, you've got a strong mobile online ordering, then that's a decent start. That's a decent starting point. We see a lot of customers move from online ordering to on-premise kiosk. Kiosk can also be a good starting point. So if you didn't have online ordering channels, or you didn't have on-premise channels on mobile, then kiosk is a much easier entry point, because it's easier to educate guests on kiosk than it is on using their own mobile phone. If you're a table service restaurant, the easiest entry point is to attack the thing that's most painful for your customer, and that is paying the check and leaving. And again, we see a lot of customers starting with pay at table, and then realizing that to get good engagement from that, they're starting to capture data from that customer that they never used to capture when they were taking a paper check to the table. So that entry point then means that we can then drive that guest to another part of that journey. So we see a lot of customers start on pay at table, and then they realize that they could put desserts and drinks on it. So to try and catch those kind of impulse purchases, especially when the restaurant is busy, they can go in, they can add a drink or add a dessert, and then add it to the check that's already running by the member of team. So it really depends on your service model and which entry point is going to be best for you.
Yeah, I hear you there. So we've got two more here that are both asking about integration. So I'll kind of package them together for you, ask them at the same time. The first one, someone asked, do you work with any VMS platform, and how your customers benefit from that integration? And then we've got a second one a bit broader here. Now that QikServe is part of the Access group, how does the integration with a broader hospitality platform change what's possible for operators who are currently running disconnected systems? So both folks there kind of asking about the integration angle here.
Yeah, I mean, integration is probably one of the bedrocks of digital, right? Probably wasn't when digital first came around. There was a lot of kind of offline digital, even QikServe at the beginning. We did offline type order capability. What you get in those situations is your data all in the wrong place. So when we think about integration, integration is about trying to move the data into the right places where it then becomes usable. So whether that's your single sources of truth, like menu or venue data or customer data, or whether it's your front ends in terms of what you're presenting, they're all enabled by integration. And ultimately, as we think about integration, and as again we reiterate from the beginning, there's a lot of complexity around that with 17 different bits of tech around there. Coming together with the Access group has meant it's expanded our ability to first of all integrate more deeply with our own solutions, but also harden how we integrate with third parties as well, and how we can bring flexibility to that. I think one of the biggest benefits of consolidating integrations and tech is that movement of data into single pots, because once we do that, once we kind of filter the data that's coming from all these channels and all these vendor layers, and we get to synthesize it into something that looks the same, that's when the real power of AI and agentic is going to have a huge impact on restaurants going forward. And really what underpins that is the integration capability of the platform.
All right, it looks like we've got one more in here that I will throw out for you. Someone wants to know, does the kiosk ask for customer information for future promotions and customer surveys / follow-ups?
Yes, in terms of you can collect information on kiosk, and many customers do. So things like surveys, things like phone numbers, signing up to loyalty, for example, on a kiosk is something that you would want to try and encourage. But the caveat to that is you have to consider what the purpose of the kiosk is. And in most cases, the purpose of the kiosk is to help with throughput. The restaurant gets value, it gets paid by moving food over a counter or food to a table. The order taking bit is the bit you want to get through as fast and as efficiently as possible. So what I would say is that yes, you can do these things on kiosk, but you have to consider what it is you've got those kiosks there to do. And if it's throughput, then throwing in surveys or collecting additional bits of information is going to slow that process down, and that's okay if you can accommodate it. But if your goal is, I want as many orders through so I can process as many orders, then that can potentially slow you down, and then you end up with queues at your kiosk, which is not something that you necessarily want.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. All right here. Well, that looks like all the questions that we have from the audience here. Before I sign us out for the day, Dan, is there anything else, any final words you want to share with our audience before we wrap up?
No, just to say a huge thank you. It's been a pleasure to put this together and share some of our experience. And yeah, I'm entirely reachable on LinkedIn. So I love connecting to people. And if I'm at a trade show or anything, I'm also love connecting and meeting new people. So yeah, look me out if you see that I'm somewhere.
There we go. All right. Well, thank you so much for a great presentation and for sharing all your knowledge and insight. And that will indeed conclude our program for today. On behalf of QSR Magazine, I want to extend our many thanks to Paytronix for making this webinar possible, to everyone in the audience for attending and asking your great questions, and of course to you, Dan, for taking us through it all. I also want to encourage everyone to fill out our survey questions. Tell us a bit about your experience today. And as a final reminder, a recording of this program will be linked on qsrmagazine.com. You can also use today's login link to view it at any time. Thanks again, and have a great day, everyone.